Hello again, I am Blunty. We're talking controllers today, and for the first time, I think, ever, I'm going to have to reverse some advice that I've given in a controller review. We're going to be talking about controllers quite a lot in the not too distant future, I imagine. Not only this video, where I tell you that I recommended this controller, but it turns out it's a piece of crap, and we're going to talk about why. You know, we've got the Nintendo Switch 2 coming up. We're going to talk about the Pro controller at some point. I've got to review that, the new Joy-Cons and any third-party controllers that launch. I'm sure there'll be several for the Switch 2. So we're going to be talking about all those controllers and any other accessories and snap-on things. And you know how it goes with the Joy-Cons at launch. By now, there's going to be a lot of really gimmicky stuff to snap onto those things. It should be fun. And I actually have a very fancy controller being delivered to me today for the purposes of review. In fact, it should arrive in about an hour, so I better get on with this video. So this is the GuliKit KK3 MAX. This is the GuliKit KK2 Pro. This is the controller I've been using most recently for the Nintendo Switch, and I've been using it for that since I got it, because it's just a little bit nicer than Nintendo's own Pro controller in a lot of different ways. I really quite like it. And off the strength of the back of that, I purchased this because this is the 3 Max, so it's had more features, bigger features. Features I wanted in particular for Monster Hunter Wilds. Namely, it has a motion control that works properly on the PC. It has a shortcut button to automatically switch the A, B, X, Y buttons around, so you can go PC mode, or Xbox mode, or Switch mode at the touch of a button. You know, lots and lots of different bells and whistles and little back pedals and all I really like. That I went over in the original review, and I really like this controller as designed. But turns out I don't like how it is constructed physically, because it turns out it's a piece of shit that's really easily broken. So let's start pulling this thing apart, and we'll start talking about that. Firstly, we're going to get these little nubbies off here. Come on, there we go, there we go, there we go. There's one. So it's got these little rubber caps over each one of these screw holes. I've had this thing open before when the first thing that broke on it broke, but that wasn't sort of a deal breaker to me at the time. I was pretty disappointed that it broke so quickly, because it was a month after getting it or something, but I was like, man, it's an ancillary feature that I wanted, but if it doesn't work, it's not, it doesn't stop the controller being useful to me. And that was these trigger stops, little switches on the back here that short throw the trigger. Yeah, one of those broke immediately. There's that little thing right there. That is part of the mechanism that actually stopped the travel of the shoulder button, and it just snapped because it was just plastic. Why they didn't make those out of metal or something more robust, I don't know, but it turns out really bad idea. So I'm not particularly rough with it. Like, I don't tend to break controllers. When I need to replace a controller, it's the Xbox style controllers are the ones I use the most because I'm a PC gamer. And it's very often like the thumb pads themselves, like the left thumb pad, the one where my thumb is the most, because they're the ones, shared between the buttons, that literally wears out. Like the rubber wears out, and it sort of wears out on one side, like how your shoes wear out eventually, part of the sole wears away where it's, most trod on. That's how I need to replace my controllers. Like functionally, I've had very few problems. I've had like 3 controllers over the last, couple of decades that have had stick drift and things like that. So, it's not the physicality of controllers that I tend to break. I don't throw them around. I look after them. I regularly clean them and things like that. But yeah, for that trigger stop to break just by regular use, it broke, in the middle of playing Monster Hunter Wilds. Yeah, that was pretty disappointing. So that was the first warning sign that this thing is not built particularly well. I think we have to actually take these off as well. These little mini paddles, which I really quite like. Again, I really quite like how this thing is designed. I just don't like how it's constructed. Spudger, spudger, spudger. There we go. So let's get some purchase here. Come on. There you go. There you go, buddy. There we go. And we'll come around here next. I love spudgers. So now we get to the other thing that broke, and we'll see if I can find that. So, oh, there it is. Yeah, so the other thing that broke, and this is the thing that made the controller functionally useless for me, like I can't use it anymore. See the travel on that one? Yeah, now look at the travel on that one. It's like, something broke there. Right there, something broke. Ah, there it is. There's the thing that broke. Right there. So there's a little, again, another piece of plastic, and this exact same grey plastic. So this plastic they're using in the construction of moving parts is way too brittle, is the issue here. Construct this thing with better quality materials, and I'd still be happy. Although at this point, it has to be said that I would think twice, 3 times, 4 times about buying another piece of GuliKit gear. Despite this controller never having been given problems, like this is solid AF, and I've used this for potentially hundreds of hours between Switch and PC use at this point. Yeah, this thing, let's see, probably not more than 200 hours use since I got it a couple months back. And most of that will be at least 120-ish hours on Monster Hunter Wilds. So yeah, not particularly fantastically happy that, yeah, right there, just a little hinge piece. Whoop. I'm sure there's a special name in product engineering for that little bit. But yeah, the little axle hinge PC thingy just snapped clean off there in regular use. And again, I'm not hard on my controllers. I don't gorilla grip the damn things and slam down on them when I'm playing or anything. And I've never ever broken a controller in this way before. I've never managed to break a trigger stop, and I've got other controllers with trigger stops in them that are plastic construction. And I've certainly never managed to break a shoulder trigger or anything like that. That's just absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, that's really, really disappointing. So I'm gonna have to put this in a pinned comment. Put this whole video in a pinned comment, I think, in my original video about it. Fortunately, that video wasn't a pure review of the controller. It contained a review, but it was mostly about Monster Hunter Wilds and the functionality I would look for in a controller for that, and all that kind of stuff. It was a fairly rambly video, to be honest with you. So was this one, really. I ramble sometimes. Hi, if you're new to the channel. But yeah, I'm going to have to pin this entire video to that and say, do not buy this controller. It is functionally wonderful, has all the features that I want, but yeah, it's built like crap. It's trash. Trash quality materials. So disappointing. So very, very disappointing. So, if you're curious, now that I'm not using that anymore for my Monster Hunter or my main, controller on my PC, I've gone back to using this, which is the Power A controller, whose model number has slipped right off the top of my head. Oh, it's a 3-letter acronym and then the letter 3. I'll put it on screen for you there. It's not a catchy product name, but it is a very solid controller. I reviewed this, I think, when Flight Sim 2024 was coming out, because it has these little kooky extendable thumbsticks to give you sort of greater leverage, and that's really, really good for, flight sim, or in fact truck simulator, Euro Truck Simulator, which I always also used it on. Gives you a lot of fine fidelity having that longer stick. Quite liked it for that. But in general, it's a very solidly built controller. Decent functions. It's got some shortcuts, extra shoulder buttons, which you hardly ever see, right up there. I quite like those, and 4 rear pads as well. And again, I like the rear pads, and it's got the trigger stops. The main reason that this wouldn't do the trick for me is because it didn't have the motion control stuff and the swappable ABXY buttons that this one had originally. So it was a few features short of being ideal, but yeah, I've gone back to using this on the PC at least. That is no longer my recommended controller. I've gone back to this as my recommended controller, or at least, the one I personally use. Open to change my mind. If anyone's out there with other controllers they want to send me for a review, I'll give them a look. And indeed, again, I've got another one coming in today from a brand I reviewed 4 or 5 years ago, I think, the last one I touched, and I quite liked it then. I still have it. I still use it. I can see it. It's on my desk right over there. I was using it the other day. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. I am Blunty. I'll catch you next time. Thank you, as always, to the patrons. And have a good one.